Hello, friends. I wanted to share with you this book by Twyla Tharp called The Creative Habit. Learn it and use it for life. This is a wonderful book. I happen to love it so much that I own it both as a paper book and as an audio book. And I love this book for many reasons, but first and foremost is that it really kind of breaks down the creativity and how you can cultivate it in your life. The chapters are phenomenal. Okay, so some of my favorite ones are rituals, harness, rituals, and then before you can think out of the box, you have to start with a box. And then scratching is really, really good. And then an A in failure is wonderful as well, as is the long run. All chapters are phenomenal. And let me talk to, it starts off with, I walk into a white room. So that idea of simple creativity starts essentially with a blank canvas for us artists. And this is very much kind of an autobiography too, in that Twyla Tharp has totally analyzed her own creative process, and she explains it to us in a wonderful way. What makes this book so wonderful is that it's storytelling at first and foremost, but then there is so much information in here, and so many. Every chapter is chock-a-block full of these wonderful thoughts about creativity, and statements that could almost in a way become mantras to help you get into the mindset of being creative. And then every chapter starts off wonderfully. And so the rituals of preparation. Now this chapter I have gone back to over and over again. I love it. And it's and she asserts how important it is to establish rituals at the beginning of the creative process, and how you can make these rituals really support the creativity. And to get the creative habit, you need a working environment that's habit forming. I mean, that's a wonderful little statement, but it's they're great for reinforcing the ideas. And so then she has these wonderful advice. She talks about the creative process and how you can ritualize things, and also even dealing with the distractions and fears that calls up, that can come up, and and specifically, she deals really with the importance of just sticking it out, and overcoming, summoning your courage to still be creative. So some of the most common fears are distractions is someone will laugh at me, has someone done it before, or the self-doubting statement of I have nothing to say, or I'll upset someone I love. And then the realization that so much is that once executed, the ideal will never be as good as it was in your mind. That is part of creativity. However, learning to overcome and face those fears and face those objections, our mental roadblocks, is a great way to cultivate that creative habit. So one of the things that makes this book so great is at the end of every chapter, she has exercises. And that some chapters have as many as 1, 2, 3, 4, and then others are shorter. Okay, so every book is great. I could go on for hours and hours about this book. Knowing your creative DNA. The better you know yourself, the more you will know when you're playing to your strengths and when you're sticking your neck out. How wonderful is that? Venturing out of your comfort zone may be dangerous, yet you do it anyways because our ability to grow is directly proportional to the ability to entertain the uncomfortable. There is nothing better than like these reminders. Someone from as successful as Twyla Tharp it's so helpful to have her sharing these deep inner truths in such a logical way. Again, at the end of the chapter is great. That it has all these wonderful exercises, and then like what's wonderful too is she's so open and shares her life so openly that this is her going through the exercise of establishing your own creative autobiography, which is such a gift, so generous. Harness Your Memory is the next chapter. And however, the chapter that I really love this chapter, chapter 5, before you can think out of the box, you have to start with a box. And that's the idea of gathering ideas. She uses like a filing box to organize her items. I personally use an idea notebook, an idea sketchbook. And then this chapter right now is called Scratching. And this is about how do you start your creative project? How do you start a creative project? What are the first steps of creative act? There are ways to do it, and that foster and support your creative activity. In fact, I've been re-listening to this as an audiobook form while I've been gardening, because it's such an excellent chapter. And one of the biggest takeaways I took from this chapter, Scratching, is be in shape. The idea is that you have to be in shape to be creative. I.e., like if you haven't been painting for a while for some reason, then that means you need to get back in shape before you can truly start being more creative. And and scratching, that first phase of getting back into shape with your creative juices is getting yourself back in shape. And she has a bunch of little other little ideas that helps give you support on how to search for your next idea, and the best places to scratch, to seek inspiration. Maybe never go back and scratch at the same place twice, or the same well of information or inspiration. And then she talks about even like getting mad at herself, like flaring her temper to heighten her emotional reaction. And then of course she has, again, wonderful exercises. And I would just say this is wonderful. And then this chapter, The Accidents Will Happen, is really good. I'm the idea that you can create plans, but in truth, a plan is only so good until you start executing, and then accidents happen. And those accidents are about, fostering and maximizing your creativity. It's just really, again, more wonderful chapters. This whole book is phenomenal about chapters, and the last two chapters are my absolute favorites. So I kind of want to move forward to those. But I would say, get this book and read it, and then maybe get the audiobook and re-listen to it when you are doing things like chores, because it's so helpful. So an A in failure. This is something I have been personally trying to embrace a lot in the past year, is that idea of the more you fail, the more you start to explore the possibilities. Like, well, what is possible? And the more you explore, it is inevitable that you're going to fail, because that's just part of the creative process. But a couple of notes that I really loved was the idea of that that there is therapeutic power in failure, in that it like cleanses the palate, and that like, and then the idea between like, do you fail publicly or fail privately? And both have very valid roles in your creative process. To fail private means that you'll fail less in public. However, it instead of viewing it as being like an insular private thing, think about that. When you choose to fail more in private, what you're doing is you're using the creative act as editing. You're editing out the ideas that maybe didn't work out so well, or it's reducing some of the chaff that you'll send out into the world, which so then it heightens the good stuff you do get out. And so when you make a goal of failing in private, you're editing, you're exercising your judgment more, you're setting the bar just a little bit higher for yourself in what you're going to share to the public, which then therefore also heightens and raises the bar for your audience. And however, you do need to also fail in public. And what I was struck by is that when you fail in public, you're forcing yourself a whole new set of skills. And it's the skills of having to do it, but those skills of failing in public isn't about your creative act. It's about resilience. It's about building resilience, and that like, and surviving and like showing up for the next day. So I would say like your public, failing in public is about summoning your courage, growing your mental stamina, and oftentimes Jerome Robbins actually asserts that like you do your best work after your biggest disasters, and it's just wonderful. And so there's several benefits of failures that Twyla then like elaborates more on. So she talks about that failure is a skill, that there's a failure of concept, that there's failure. The third kind of failure is one of judgment. So your judgments, or your failure of your nerve, like you lose your nerve. Failure through repetition, and then like one of the worst is failure comes from denial, when you're denying reality. But that like failure, getting better at failure heightens your ability to create, which then heightens the type of work you do, and it it changes you. It makes you stronger. It makes you a better creative, a better artist. And if you're reading this to be an artist, which as an artist, it's very important to me to constantly be reading and exploring these ideas of creativity, because they make so much sense to me as an artist, and that it encourages me to get back to the easel, to try to improve the way I'm expressing myself. And then the last chapter is just one, I think, for the idea of that we choose to be creative and to have a creative career because we want to live that life. And so the idea is, I think, like, be ready to plan for the long haul. You won't find that success the first, second, or third year. I mean, yes, there are young artists that do that, but the artists that keep at it every day for the long haul, they are the ones that create so much in the long, the body of work is just phenomenal. So I really like this one quote that Twyla has in her book, and I'm going to read it to you, and I'll end my my review of this book with this thought, because I think it's so important. The libraries and archives and museums are packed with early bloomers and one-trick ponies who said everything they had to say in their first novel, who could only compose one good tune, or whose canvas kept repeating the same dogged theme. My respect has always gone to those who are in it for the long haul. When people who have demonstrated talent fizzle out or disappear after early creative successes, it's not because their gifts, that famous 1% inspiration, abandoned them. More likely, they abandoned their gift through a failure of perspiration. So, read this book. Get your hands on this book. Listen to it as an audio book too, when you're doing like chores or whatever, and just, fine tune that creative habit, because it's so worth it in the long run. Thank you so much.